So our intro now is, God damn it, I can't get the intro to work.
Yeah, God damn it, I can't get the intro to work. Hello, everybody, and welcome
So
to...
our intro now is, God damn it, I can't get the intro to work.
Yeah, God damn it, I can't get the intro to work.
The
Hello,
Tagline
everybody,
Podcast.
and welcome... hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tagline Podcast. I am, of course, your host, the Meerkat Monarch, sometimes known as Lillevik. And with me today, as always, is my buddy...
Gene, the Angry Penguin. And
Yeah.
today we will be discussing, in horror and sci-fi mostly, but we might jump in here and there, a little bit about CGI versus practical effects. And
Yes. Special effects.
Yeah.
The correct terminology is special effects. But we do say, special effects has sort of become everything, but it used to be, special effects used to be the practical effects, but most people say practical effects now. So
I think it's just to differentiate between CGI, because it's so common to say CGI and special effects are interchangeable, and most of the time when you say practical effects, you mean you're not sitting some poor artist down in front of a computer for 20 hours to shine Iron Man's ass.
Is there something that you want to tell us, Gene? Is there some Iron Man shining?
I'm not into robots, not at all, not in any way, shape, or form.
That's good.
Robert Downey Jr. on the other hand.
Okay. Let's first define it, okay? Because practical effects for the uninitiated, unmovie nerd type of person, how do you define practical effects? Should I do that since I'm the professional here?
Yeah, I was gonna say I define it by anything that is not computer-assisted design. You actually have, it would be like everything from backdrops to props and things like that. Those are the practical effects.
Yeah, but you should. Here's the thing: you shouldn't call it the computer-assisted design, because with the advent of 3D printing, and that's why I think actually practical effects could have a resurgence on a certain level. 3D printing might actually bring a lot of modeling and practical effects back, because it's easier to make the parts now.
Well, yeah, and I mean it's true. And I know I mentioned Star Wars. That's probably a good place to start. That's a good cultural touchstone there.
Yeah, most people know what Star Wars is.
And I'd say, I mean, do I even have to really compare the original trilogy and how well it's lasted? And if we could get our hands on just a unedited copy of the original trilogy on Blu-ray, just touched up for Blu-ray, not touched
just
up for
remastered. That's all we need.
Not Lucasized.
Yeah,
but I think you would see how much those hands-on, handcrafted effects, the old special effects, the old style of special effects, last compared to hands-on, handcraft CG.
Yeah, I mean the problem with here's the thing, okay? The problem with the practical versus CGI in the original trilogies is that you can tell so fucking easily what has been modified and what is original. Because the original has this sort of grain to it. It has texture to it. It feels like it's done. For instance, take this scene. Remember, it's one of my favorite scenes. It's from Empire Strikes Back, when Luke has landed on Dagobah, and his ship starts to sink, and you can see the ship. You can see that it's there. It's not CGI at all. You can see the texture. You can see the flaws. Most of all, you can see the flaws. You can see that it's the hand painted parts of the X-wing is actually it has these minor flaws, and that's what tells me that, okay, this was actually done by people. It feels like, okay, this X-wing was actually it was kept up to date by people doing their job. If you get what
yeah, I mean, what you see is you can add a layer of detail that even if you add wear and tear to something on a computer, and no, we're not dissing CG artists. CG artists are incredible artists.
Yeah.
I think their skills are abused for modern cinema, where they in ways that they aren't appropriate for. You know, if you have a ship sinking in a swamp, as our current example,
yeah,
you build the set.
Yeah.
And then you go back and you have the CG artists go in and take that same scene, and what they do is they look for those
minor flaws. Yeah.
Continuity errors.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. They can change the lighting. They can take something that may have just some real minor flaws and make it perfect, or take something that's really just cheaply done and clean it up a lot, you know, depending on the scenario. It's almost like, I think the CG artists for regular film job is cleanup and addition of detail.
Yeah.
You know, to add those little things in the background that, you know, you'd kind of have to get right up on the screen to tell they were CG, but at the same time, add to the world and add to the environment, you know, and flesh out the universe with little things that maybe, you know, you don't want to have a hand painter spend 100 work hours doing little micro details on some little artwork in the background that you can CG in on the back end and get that level of detail you're looking for in 10 hours of, you know, an artist's time. I don't know if that may be a little more mercenary, but, you know, it's realistic too.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that attaining that perfect balance. For instance, if you look at the really old kind of special effects, the stop motion animation,
Clash of the Titans.
Yes, Clash of Titans was exactly the example that I wanted to mention. That not the Mark Hamill. What's his name again? God damn it! Now my brain's completely fried. I'm sorry. I was up all night watching a football game, and my brain is fried. No, but anyways, the 80s version of Clash of the Titans, the really good one, it has its charm, and the thing is that people realized that they needed to have emphasis on story and character development to kind of hide that their effects weren't maybe not realistic.
The films weren't effects driven.
No, exactly.
They couldn't be. I mean, you have things like Jaws, and this is a classic story for anybody who doesn't know it. Jaws, as the film, is probably 100 times better than it would have been had the special effects worked properly.
Yeah.
Because the shark was supposed to be everywhere. You know, it was supposed to be a much bigger part of the film, but the mechanical shark didn't work properly. So they cut it back, and it made for a much more suspenseful, character-driven film, I think, at the end of the day. You know, a happy accident.
Yeah, and that's actually, they inadvertently created this very important rule for filmmakers. We use it all the fucking time, in film production and so on. We use that example all the time. Don't show Jaws in the first frame. Like, we say that all the fucking time. You never show Jaws in the first frame, and everybody knows it. And yet, when you have an effects-driven movie, an overproduced and oversaturated, typical sort of, I hate to use this word because I love American film culture, but I'm gonna say it anyway. This typical American Hollywood blockbuster. You kind of want to show off that, I can do this. I can really do this. But
I think what you're talking about is less Hollywood in general, because you do have a huge indie market in Hollywood. But I think you're talking studio culture. You're talking the big studios.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. The big the typical sort of blockbuster productions. Yes. And people are probably gonna ask us, are you gonna talk about the movie I will not mention? No, we will not talk about that movie on this podcast ever again. We've talked enough about it. I don't want to mention it again, because, you know, I don't want to give them any more. I don't want to give them any more free publicity. It's already gotten a lot of paid publicity. So yeah. No, but it's this idea of CGI often becoming a sort of tool for showing off what you can do, when practical effects become that kind of thing. Oh shit, we can't really afford to have this character in every fucking frame. So or you end up in a situation like Jaws, that the mechanical shark doesn't work, and therefore, okay, could we get it possibly to work on that date, because we really need that taking a bite out of the boat scene. We need it there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we could rig the camera and we can do sort of movie magic to give you the impression that the shark is really there.
Yeah, and I think a good example of how a semi-CGI character is treated was probably Vision in Captain America: Civil War.
Yeah.
Because probably 90% of the screen time Vision was on there, it's just the actor in the costume.
Yeah.
And they obviously went back and touched it up with CG, but and that's Fassbender, right?
No, I don't. Is that Fassbender? No, it's
so.
God, what's his name again? God damn it! You keep mentioning things, and then I have to look them up.
Ha ha ha!
Yeah.
It's all part of my evil plan to get you to use your data plan. I don't know. you Europeans might have unlimited data.
Yeah, we. I mean, God damn it, we're basically socialists according to you Americans. So yeah, we have free. Well,
compared to us Americans, you pretty much are.
Well, kind of not.
Let's get to politics.
Yeah, let's talk politics. No, fuck it. Let's talk movies. I'm gonna figure this out. Talk while I'm looking. Cause
what?
I don't know. I have no idea. You're the one who brought this up.
Look, I'm going to talk about horror movies then.
Paul Bettany.
Okay, say it 3 times and he shall appear. It's not Beetlejuice, man.
No, I know. Oh, we could talk about Beetlejuice, because that is a good that actually has a good combination of a lot of really good practical effects in that movie, Beetlejuice.
Yeah, and it holds up.
Yeah,
it does. Mean, obviously, but It's kind of a special case because it is Tim Burton, and it has, even the real has a surreal element. So, anything that maybe throw you off a little just fills in place in that particular universe. It the visual style really, really, really lends itself to old school. We built this house with the weird wall and no roof. We had a modern artist design this stupid looking house for us.
Yeah, it is the Amityville house that modern art built.
No, but when it comes to horror, and I don't think any independent filmmakers ever listen to us, but if somebody just happens across this podcast and you make indie horror, two things you should never do. Never do CGI scary face.
Yeah.
Because that's just stupid. It looks bad. It doesn't scare anybody. And mostly it just looks bad. It makes your film look cheap. And don't add CGI blood ever. Anybody.
No.
If you cannot hook up a hose and spray your set down with fake blood, don't even bother. Because it looks like crap.
Yeah. I worked on a horror movie called The House a couple of years back, and we did every fucking effect that we did on that movie was practical. And that is just, it takes a lot of work, but it looks so much better on screen than CGI, especially when it comes to horror, because I don't think I can mention one CGI effect in a horror movie that really freaked me out. I don't think I can I can't think of one fucking CGI movie that really freaked me out. The only thing might have been The Ring, but that's not really CGI either. It's a CGI transition from
and
the VHS
that worked.
to the
and that worked because you were going from video in the movie to, and they used computer effects, when she was out of the TV to add that sort of staticky look.
Yeah, but that's
the actress was there. She was there.
Yeah, but
she was in costume.
That is not CGI. That is editing. That is they may have used a computer to generate that edit, but it is mostly editing tricks that does that sort of jumpy sort of movement type of thing. I've actually played a role where we use that trick, and it's not that hard to do either, and do it if you're gonna do it on a low budget production. Do it in the editing room with your editor instead of doing it with CGI, because it looks awesome if you can make it happen.
Well, because basically, aren't you just taking, and you're basically, because it's overlays, it's layer over layer, and aren't you just messing with the layer that you've got your actress cropped out on, and you're just doing edit effects to that layer.
You're basically putting you're putting two pictures up on each other, and you're making one picture translucent, and then you sort of shift the edit slightly so that it looks like it's this sort of jolty, yet also this sort of ghost like movement, and it's not hard to do. It's if you need CGI to fucking do that, then I'm sorry, you've been in front of the computer for far too too long, because you can do that with basic editing tools. Not necessarily. I mean, you use a computer editing software, of course. I mean, there are still people that use the wheel and so on, but I personally, I don't do that. And I don't know anybody who does that.
Do you think that might be part of some of the quality issues we've discussed in the past, where what used to be left to the editor is not left to an editor, which has a very different skill set than, say, a CGI artist?
Yes. Yes, because a CGI artist is not necessarily educated in narrative structure. An editor has to understand that narrative structure. There are two essential parts to movie making that don't get enough credit, in my opinion, and that's the editor and the screenwriter. As a person who is a screenwriter, I of course have a tendency to talk a lot about screenwriting, but the idea of the editor sort of being controlled by the producer, I don't like that at all. The editor should be there in cooperation with the director to make the best possible edit there is.
Because, and I mean, edit can make and break a film.
Oh yeah, oh definitely. Again, I almost mentioned the movie that we should not talk about, but that was one of the problems with it, apparently, was that the edit was fucking terrible.
Well, and I mean, we can talk about another movie. I haven't got to see it yet, but I've refused to see it because apparently Superman versus Batman, Dawn of Cash, is 1,000 times better, and I use those numbers exaggerating.
Yeah.
It might just be okay as a film with like the I guess it's the director's cut, it's the ultimate cut or whatever. It's the R-rated cut of the film. And apparently, there's a lot of stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor for, I guess, time's sake. And whoever edited that film either had bad instructions, and couldn't, and that's the thing about editor. Like, when I see a badly edited film, I don't want to immediately blame the editor. I'll say it was badly edited, but it is not necessarily an editor's fault.
No, that can, I mean, that is the problem with a lot of, we're moving into completely different areas that we said we were going to talk about, but it still matters in the same type of sphere. You can tell by movies that have done the overuse of CGI, it's the same fucking thing. It's usually too many cooks. There are too many producers that want this and this and this in, and therefore, we need to show this the monster as early as possible to sort of hook the audience member in. No, that's not how you tell a story. You don't tell the bad guys. I mean, it's the same thing of telling the bad guy's motivation too early in the movie. You don't do that. You keep it a mystery as early as possible, as long as possible, and then you push the motivation for the bad guy, the antagonist out there.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of things. You never show what are the rules with a monster. You never show it too early. You never show it in full light. No. There's certain rules that you follow, and those rules kind of got thrown out because you can make it look really nice in CG. So you want to show this monster that you have no reason to hide because it isn't made with extraordinary detail, but out of foam rubber. So you kind of are hiding it in the darkness, and you've got it covered in water or something to make it look, or glycerin to make it look shiny.
Yeah.
And, like the original Alien, it looks Like, you see that thing in full light. You see the alien in full light.
Yeah.
The original alien suit looks like garbage.
Yeah, and
You know?
it's the same thing. I use this director as an example of for young filmmakers what level of passion that you need, but you need to up the skill. Ed Wood. When Ed Wood did, I think it was Bride of the Monster. Yes, it is Bride of the Monster or Bride of the Atom, as he originally called it. He has a scene with an octopus. And that octopus, they didn't have the machine for it. And they didn't have an area that was deep enough with water to really shoot that. So they shot it in basically the equivalent of a kiddie pool, and had the actor sort of move the arms around, and they had full fucking lighting. And that's a no-no. That is a no-no. And these rules were established not quite early, but I think the 60s and the 70s were the high days of the really, really good, or 50s, 60s, and 70s were the highlights of the really good sort of suspense horror movies, like House of Haunted Hill, which we talked about after the podcast last time.
Yeah. It prompted this discussion. We were actually going to focus on these two separate horror films, but we kind of got off the rails.
Yeah, we got a little bit off the rails, but that is a perfect example of a good premise done badly in a remake. The House on Haunted Hill, the original, it's all lighting, makeup, and hiding the bad guy, hiding the antagonist, hiding the ghost, basically, through the entire movie, and it's really fucking creepy. That is, I'm gonna reveal it already now, but that is going to be my recommendation of the week. That movie, House on Haunted Hill, the original from 1956, I think.
Quick.
59. Sorry, I turned the last number upside down. 1959 is the right one. And that was directed by William Castle. And most of that shit is just lighting and makeup. Most of it. And there are some scenes that still to this day, and I'm pretty blasé when it comes to your traditional horror nowadays. There are scenes there that still freak me out.
What's interesting about that, the production company, because I was into them for a few years.
Yeah.
Dark Castle started with that film pretty much. I think they may have had one before it, but they started with that film pretty much because they were going to try to emulate or modernize Castle's work.
Yes.
That director.
Yes.
Because he knew how to mess with an audience.
Yes.
The man knew how to mess with an audience.
He was very, very good at that.
And the film I was going to recommend and discuss in the same vein was 1963's The Haunting.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I remember, I want to share this little story, because I remember one of my best friends, we were sitting there, we were teenagers at the time, and we were hanging out at his house, and we saw this film called The Haunting was about to come on. So we're like laughing about it, because it's an old black and whitish horror. And we're going to just sit there and watch it to make fun of it.
Yeah.
The movie started. It starts with a little story that sets up things. Neither of us said a word for the runtime.
Yeah.
And when it was after, we both were like, whoa.
Yeah,
You know,
and that is
what was the
yeah, that was Robert Weiss as well. So that was done in an amazing way, and that also has a couple of scenes that still fucking freak me out.
yeah it
I know uh, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but there is a scene in that movie with one of the female cast members at the top of a stairwell that still fucking freaked the living shit out of me. And
but it
it's all psychological. It's not this the newer version from 1999. I think it was 1999.
I looked it up a
With
second ago.
the Catherine Zeta-Jones and so on.
Yeah,
That
and I would say the cast and the one from 1999, huge disappointment as a film, but the cast was good.
Oh
That was a great cast to tell that story. But the reliance on the blatant CG scares, with no nuance to it, and that's the thing. I think we probably feel a little down on CG the way we do is because it's never used in a nuanced way.
Yeah, and that's another problem is that they don't combine it. For instance, if you would have a scene where you build up the tension and then you sort of release the tension in a fake way. For instance, somebody bumps into someone else or you know what I'm saying. You know what I mean. That you sort of you enter a room alone or with somebody else, and then you get surprised by another cast member, and then you would have
fake out.
Yeah, the fake out, and then you would have the typical Hollywood thing where you would have something coming out of a mirror or the wall or whatever. What if you just did the wall thing, and then you would have something physical fall out on the person instead of having this ghost, for instance. Take the example from The Haunting, where you have ghosts coming out of the fireplace in the new version. I think it's a fireplace, right?
Yeah, the fireplace. No, well, we don't want to talk too much about it, but the fireplace is important, and ghosts come out of it.
Yeah.
Not to avoid spoilers.
Yeah.
Because
But
the stories between the two movies are really just it's the same story.
Yeah, it's very similar, but in the original, it's more psychological. You never get the proper fucking answer to what happened. But in the remake, it's really.
Well, it's why I think, and I think The Ring was a very effective horror movie because it had a twist. It did. It had the twist.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like it wasn't that it came out of nowhere. It's you know, things were going on you didn't understand. You had a really limited view of everything. They spent most of the movie is a detective story, you know, and they built up the tension, and then the monster comes out, and when the monster comes out, you're like, oh shit, that is not something I want to see when I get home, you know, and it was visceral, it was real, it was in your face, there was something physically there being filmed.
And Keld also wants us to compare the original Nightmare on Elm Street with the remake. I don't want to do that because I haven't seen the remake, and I'm not going to see the remake.
Keld's probably our biggest fan, so I'll do it.
I would do it if I'd seen the remake.
The problem with the remake was nobody cared. I don't know why they did the remake. The things in it, the dream effects, the dark tone was there,
Yeah.
but it just didn't work as a film. I wouldn't. It fell down before the CG let it down.
Yeah, and the thing
Let's put it
about
that way.
the thing about the first movie is that you don't the the first Nightmare on Elm Street, you never get the explanation of why Freddy Krueger is Freddy Krueger. He's just a
He's
really
just
an evil dude, and that's the
yeah, he just is.
point. That is the point of a good fucking. I'm not saying that for instance, The Ring explains why the girl is so evil as she is, both in the Japanese and the American version. I personally prefer the Japanese version.
They have follow-up films that kind of explain it a little bit more.
Yeah. But they go into detail in the original Nightmare on Elm Street. They don't go into detail as to why he got burnt. They don't go. They just say he got burnt by the parents on Elm Street.
Well, they say what he did.
Yes,
you know?
Yeah.
And the new one, and I think that the new one may have taken it a step too far story-wise, because in the old one he killed kids. In the new one, he molested children.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the first one. We didn't know who Freddy was. He was a new character, a new creation. He was something neat. And the new one, you're telling a story everybody already knows. You're doing it I don't know if they over-relied on CG. It's been forever since I've seen it, because it wasn't good enough for a second or third viewing. But they took that extra dark tone and they used that kind of as a dog whistle for the level of darkness.
Yeah.
Whereas the first film, Freddy showed you how evil Freddy was.
Yeah,
you didn't need that extra thing of he was a child murderer, but you didn't need that extra little push of he's a child murderer that also molested children. You didn't need that extra evil there. It was writ large in the character.
Yeah, and sometimes I think that they use that dog whistle because they don't believe that it's scary enough. They want that extra sort of this story has been seen before. People know this character. Let's throw a little bit extra on him just to make him a little bit more of a creepy personality, but a creepy personality is not necessarily a scary personality. And I think I actually need to watch that movie now, because just so that I can rail against it on another occasion, because the 1970s and 1980s horror movies had simple fucking plots, but they were scary because they were simple. They were this, and I realize people want there to be more sort of depth to a lot of things, and I love thrillers that actually have a lot of depth and a lot of motivation to the antagonist. But sometimes horror just needs to be horror. There just needs to be, the Saw guy, the guy from Saw, he doesn't need he doesn't need a deep fucking motivation. He just needs to be.
They gave him one. Well, it's like Shaw is one of those series I wish they just made. Like I don't mind horror movies going into sequels. It's what they do, but like they kill off the villain in the third film.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it just goes on like it was some sort of self-punishment of mine that I watched the first three. I had to watch them all. I own them all.
Yeah.
Just to do it.
I just watched the two first, and then I gave up. I love the first movie, and the second movie is good, but I saw where the sort of direction of the curve was going.
Oh yeah. Well, that's because you had somebody like James Wan, who directed it, at least directed the first one. I can't remember if he directed or just produced the second one. But he's gone on to make Dead Silence and Death Sentence, The Conjuring, and some other movies. And he likes practical effects, though.
Yeah.
He likes, I remember hearing some things for Dead Silence, which was one of my favorite, funner, more current horror films, just because, dolls are creepy. Yeah. Have you seen that one?
Oh, the Annabelle one, or?
No, Dead Silence, not Annabelle.
Oh, Dead Silence. Oh no, I haven't seen that. I need
to.
No,
you should check it out. It's a lot of fun. It has that kind of 80s horror feel to it. Here's the story. They're trying to figure out, what's going on. Here's some victims. Here's the creepy thing that keeps showing up. Go from there.
And here's another that I think that wasn't necessarily overlooked, but I don't think gets enough cred as far as a horror movie. Sinister was one of the creepiest fucking films I have seen in a long while, and it's mostly fucking practical effects. It is just an awesome ride of emotions.
Sinister, Jesus. Yeah. Sinister was dark, though.
Yeah.
But part of what carried Sinister was, I think, just Ethan Hawke's acting. He had to carry it. It was just him on screen reacting to stuff for like a third of the movie. And you were still scared. You were scared because he looked scared and the things around him were creepy.
Yeah.
There was an atmosphere to it. It had a weight to it. I think the remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre got it down too. Because I remember seeing that film and walking out of the theater, and none of my friends saying anything till we got down the street and I sighed heavily.
Yeah.
Because the movie it was grotesque, but it had it had that weight to it. It had that suspense to it. You didn't know, it was just brutal. And you don't get that anymore. You don't get that weight of the atmosphere. You can't feel it coming off the screen,
Yeah. Oh, Keld is bad-mouthing us in chat for liking Sinister. He says it's a badly written plot. And yes, that's the point of Sinister. That's why it is creepy. It's it's a typical 80s horror movie, and that's why it works.
And that's the thing with horror movies, is they don't have to have a well-written plot. They have to be well acted and atmospheric, and that is it.
Yes.
Look at like Blair Witch. Go back and watch it. It didn't age well.
No, I agree.
But it is, if you're watching it by yourself, it's still a little creepy.
At the time, I can remember, because when I was growing up, I lived right next to this wooded area, and I had to walk through that after watching it for the first time at a friend's house. Oh my God, I've never ever I've never run so fast through that fucking forest in my entire fucking life.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's because the forest is inherently creepy.
Yeah.
At night.
Yeah.
And it was about these kids lost in the forest. They're dumb kids. They do stupid stuff.
It's a terrible fucking plot. It's idiotic characters. They are morons.
Well, anytime I sit down to found footage film. Anytime I sit down,
Yeah.
and if my friends are over and we're clicking through and we're going through some indie films and we're about to watch a found footage film,
Yeah.
and I click on it, it's like in the first 5 minutes, I tell them, decide if you want to watch these people get killed or not.
Yeah.
Because you know where it's going. The plot isn't so important as the journey. You know, the atmosphere, the things that are supposed to be creeping you out. Because a horror movie can do what a lot of other movies can't. If you have a stupid plot for a suspense a spy thriller, it's not going to work. It just comes off as dumb. If you have a stupid plot for a horror movie, it can create the atmosphere it needs, get under your skin, and for the duration of the film, it doesn't matter if the plot's stupid.
No, exactly.
And then it gets under your skin.
Yeah, and that's the point of horror. I think we've actually gone a little bit too far away from our actual topic. I think that we need to get some recommendations out there. I know I said House on Haunted Hill, but I'm gonna change it and say, if you really want to watch a beautiful movie with practical effects, and I know I've recommended this movie before, and I know it's not horror, but please watch The Labyrinth. Do it for me, please. It's a good fucking movie, and the practical effects in that movie still hold up. And David Bowie's jockstrap does a beautiful job in that movie.
Yes, clearly that was one comfortable man throughout that movie. He was just swinging free in that thing. Either that or he's scarily well endowed.
Yeah.
And I'm going to recommend The Haunting. And I'm going to go ahead and take Jan's original and House on Haunted Hill, the original version.
Yes.
The 57 version and the 63 version of The Haunting.
Yeah, 59 and 63.
59 and 63. And go ahead and pair them with their new versions. They're not horrible films.
No.
They're popcorn films. The new version of the House on Haunted Hill has a much lighter, playful tone.
Yes.
Which I think they were trying to go back to what Castle did back in the day. But it falls down on some hurdles as far as the visuals go that the original nailed. And The Haunting, you can watch the new one, but I recommend you do it drunk. Just watch the original on that one. House on Haunted Hill, I could recommend both versions for different reasons.
Yeah, do a drinking game. How many times do you see a creepy woman's face in the background? You have to take a shot.
Oh my God. I don't even know. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch the original because, oh my God, that woman's face.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the original Pet Sematary? Really, really, really bad version of a good book, in my opinion.
I think it still worked. I have a special place in my horror heart for
Yes.
Pet Cemetery.
We can agree to disagree on that one because I'm in love with the Stephen King books, and I still think that none apart from The Shining have actually worked on fucking screen.
Missed.
Yes, all of them missed
it.
Especially fucking what?
Mist. The Mist.
Okay, The Mist. Yeah. I'll give you that. The Mist worked.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen it, Stephen King likes the end. It's based off one. Stephen King's short stories are 1,000 times, and I've said that so many times in this podcast, but is so much stronger than his
Yeah. Secret Window. You should watch if you want to watch a good Stephen King horror movie.
Yeah, and if you want to hear some more agreeing to disagree, you can tune in on Fridays and catch Yan and some of the others, Heart of Asira, Dr. Evil, occasionally Asto, on the Unsolicited Opinions podcast. That's Fridays afternoon at 4 o'clock on the East Coast. And you can catch us here every Sunday afternoon, or about the same time, 4 o'clock on the East Coast. So we will catch y'all later, and thanks for tuning in.
Bye.